What's up, guys? On today's episode of Forward Progress, I talk with Kyle Rooker, head football coach at North Park University in Chicago, Illinois. Coach Rooker just finished his fifth season leading the program and led the team to a 5-5 finish, which is the most wins in the season for the football program since 1968. He was also voted the D3Football.com or Football.com Region 5 Coach of the Year. And we talk about building a program with limited resources, his unique way of building leadership within the program, and how being an O-line coach helped him prepare to be a head coach. So sit back, relax, and enjoy some forward progress. Well, what's up, Kyle? Thanks for joining me today. How's everything going, man?
Yeah, Nubis, everything's going well. I really appreciate you having us. Just kind of winding down here before spring break. It's our last week of winter workouts, doing a little testing this week, and the guys get a little time off. So, just busy with that and recruiting, really.
Yeah. Have you guys, a D3 is obviously a little different beast compared to the scholarship level. Are you guys, you're still kind of in the thick of it, still having visits and things like that right now?
We are. Most of our visits this time of year are from our distance areas. In addition to obviously Chicagoland area being right here on the north side of Chicago and in the general Midwest. We have some targeted areas in Tampa and Fort Myers, Florida, Houston, Texas, and then Phoenix, Arizona. We've been to those places in the last month or so, and now we're getting a lot of those kids on campus as we speak. Had a bunch on campus last weekend, and then after spring break we'll have a lot more of those guys coming. Most of our Midwestern visits have taken place by this point in time.
Gotcha. And then what's kind of your schedule moving forward? You guys got spring break next week, you said?
We do, yeah,
And
we
then
do.
when do you start? What do you do after you get back? You get right into spring ball, or do you have more workouts and stuff like that?
This year is a little bit different for us, a combination of the Easter holiday being a little bit earlier on the calendar. And then also, as you know, the NCAA allows you to take your team, out of the country every third year if you like to have a foreign experience and play a game. And so we're going to Italy.
Oh,
Actually,
wow.
we leave May 12th. Yeah. I was at Carthage College prior to North Park, and I did that. I was part of one of those trips as an assistant coach.
Yeah.
Knew I wanted to do it here. We just had to build the roster up to the point to where we could actually make it viable. So because of the combination of those two things, when we come back from spring break, we'll have 2 weeks where we're still just basically in our normal winter routine, lifting, running a little bit, 4 days a week. And then after Easter, we'll give the guys the Good Friday through Easter Monday off. And then we come back Tuesday, have meetings, and we'll have our first spring practice the Wednesday after Easter,
Okay.
basically go through the month of April.
How many guys will you be taking with you to Italy?
We're right at 40, I think 39 or 40 guys, going to Italy. We got a total travel party at right at 90, with coaches, parents, support staff.
Sure.
So it's good. We're
Uh,
excited, looking forward to it.
Yeah, I did one of those obviously here when I was at Carthage as well. We went to Spain, and that was a really good experience. I think we took around the same, maybe a little bit more. What did you guys? How do you guys fund that?
Really it's funded by the players and or families. Now, we're going with, and I think maybe you all did too, but we're going with American Football Worldwide and Jim Barnes.
Yep.
And so he had set up some, or he didn't really personally set them up, but encouraged our guys to set up some different fundraising opportunities, just take advantage of folks that they know that might support a trip like that. So I know some of our guys did utilize those means. And in other cases, it was just the family, was committed to having their son, enjoy this experience. So
Yeah.
we didn't really do anything specific to fundraise for it.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, that's a great experience. I think it's good. Builds team camaraderie for sure. And
It does. It
I
does.
think you don't realize how many kids don't have that opportunity. Some kids have, if they're in-state kids, they may not have ever been on a plane before, so they get a chance to travel to a different part of the world and see some different things, get some different perspectives. So
For
that should
sure.
be a fun time. After going to Spain, I'm really I really wanted to go to Italy at some point and go on one of those trips. So that should
Yeah.
be a good time. Now, have you been to Italy before? Is that where you guys went when you were
That
at Carthage?
that is, yeah, that's the
Okay.
only place I've been on one of these trips. It just so happens that we're going there again. And it's a combination of where you could get the most bang for your buck, so to speak, and have the best overall experience. And
Right.
Jim, brought a couple places, forward, and we talked about it as a program, and really I would kind of let the guys, as long as it was budgetarily going to be similar, let the guys decide, and they chose Italy, and I enjoyed my first time in Italy, so
Yeah.
it's not a problem to go back.
Awesome. So kind of flipping gears here a little bit. What do you kind of do? I like to always talk about, especially when I get head coaches on. I'm big on culture. I always love learning about how guys build their culture, instill their culture. What do you like to do? You're in the off season right now. How do you take this time to really continue to build that team culture with your guys? You're obviously not with them nearly as much as in season. So what are some of the things you do to keep instilling those values and that philosophy that you've built there?
Yeah, for sure, and it really is important, and I always felt it to be important as an assistant coach, but when you become the head coach, you're really the driver of that culture, and then I think the culture becomes the best though when it becomes player led. And I'm a big believer that the best teams are player led teams. So especially with at the Division III level, us not being able to have as much contact with our guys, per rules and regulations. It really kind of encourages and forces the team to become more player led. And, one of our assistant coaches, Jason Staff, who's our assistant head coach, defensive line coach, and been very fortunate to be able to hire him and all the guys that are on our staff currently. But he has a background in business. He was very successful when he was younger in business. And he brought this idea to the table last year, right after the season. So it would have been after the 2022 season. And so we restructured our leadership council. Like a lot of programs have leadership councils, and frankly, in all the places I've been, probably naive on my part, but it's I just kind of did what we did at the other two places, Worcester and Carthage, and that it was voted on by coaches and players. And if there was somebody that maybe you didn't feel like was a good fit, then as the head coach, you could make the best decision to put the right guys on there. But it was often a popular vote, if you will,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So what we transitioned to was having our guys apply to be on leadership council, interview to be on leadership council. So they had to take some initiative to want to do it.
Okay.
And then we actually, once we'd selected those individuals, we now have 5 committees that we have one coach that's kind of the point person for each committee, but really it's, again, player led. There'll be a few of those leadership council guys that lead each committee, and then they'll go out and get some other players on the team where it might be a good fit for them to be on that committee. And those committees are academic, social, team bonding, if you will, recruiting, spiritual, and community service. Right. So those are the 5 different, committees that we have. And so then the players are really, through all of those different committees, staying more, connected, more engaged, working with each other more than just being in the weight room or on the track or on the field if they're doing some of their player-led stuff.
So what, do they have to go through a true interview process where they're answering questions and they're talking to the team? And if so, what are some questions that you ask them? What are some things that you use to figure out, is this guy really qualified to be a captain and a leadership in a leadership role? What are some ways you make sure they're qualified for that
For
through
sure.
this interview process?
The interview is just with the coaches. The other players are not involved in that. So again, in the application, we ask some leadership based questions, frankly, pretty vanilla questions. What is your definition of leadership? What are, qualities of a good leader? Who are some good leaders, in your experiences, just pretty vanilla things like that. And then when we get down and we interview them, we dive into those questions in a little bit more detail. And then really just try to get a sense for how important being a leader is to them and why they feel like they'd be a great fit in that role. We really kind of talk about strengths and weaknesses that they have from a leadership standpoint. Every interview can be a little bit different, to be honest, because every guy is a little bit different. And we, in some of them, it's, we have a handful of guys now, and a few years ago, I don't know if we would have had any, but we have a handful of guys now that I would say are kind of no-brainers to everybody in the program. And then you have some other guys that they show, for 3 weeks, they're a great leader. And then they, make a bad decision, or they slack off a little bit or have some different, so there's some inconsistencies there that we have to kind of dive into and, just try to find out a little bit more about if they recognize those weaknesses in themselves, if they can correct those weaknesses, and if we feel like this could be a great growth opportunity for them if given the chance to be part of it.
Right, for sure. Well, no, I always could tell when we played you guys, your culture over the years has continued to grow, and you can see that it's definitely a player led team. So what you're doing is definitely working. Um, Now, obviously, being in the CCIW, it's a really tough conference, and for lack of a better way of describing it, you obviously don't have some of the resources that other teams in the conference have, but you've always managed to build a competitive team. How do you go about doing that when you know you're walking into a program? When you got there, North Park hadn't had the greatest success, but you were still able to go in there and build that culture. How do you get that buy-in? How do you get those guys to keep buying in year after year when they're looking at places like North Central every single year? They're looking at places like Wheaton and they're seeing what they're up against, but your guys never seem to back down from that challenge. They always go out, and every single week you guys are putting up that competitive effort, and it led to a really good season for you guys this year. How do you build that? How do you go in as a head coach looking down that barrel and keep plugging along? Where do you start, and how do you keep it moving as you go through that process?
Yeah, really important questions. Some of the stuff I think, in the coaching profession, we all kind of, steal from other people. And so there's been plenty of coaches that have talked about recruit, retain, develop. And way back when I interviewed for this job, that was the front of the manual, recruit, retain, develop. But I'm a huge believer in that. And, to me, it's all about recruiting the right people.
Mhm.
And the people start with the coaching staff. You got to be able to recruit the right kind of coaches. Not just guys who are quality X and O guys. That's important, and good recruiters. That's important. But for me, they've got to be good people. Good mentors. In it for the right reasons. And I'll admit that, right now, like I love our staff right now. And we've had a really good group of coaches from my time here. Even our first year when we were frankly a really bad football team, we had some coaches that are, all over the place, Utah and Youngstown State and Gardner Webb. And we've had some really good young coaches. But you got to get the right people on board that are about the right things. And then when you recruit players, for us, we really just look for four things. And I'd say this to every, recruit and family that we talk to: talented player. As you indicated, the CCIW is a no joke league. You've got to have great talent to compete. Committed in the classroom. Now, everybody loves the 4.0 guy, not just because he's intelligent to a degree, but because generally that means he's going to work pretty hard. The third thing is good person, strong character, going to represent the program the right way. And then the fourth thing is love football. And, I go to great lengths to try to, I don't know if I'd say scare, but, we make it very evident to the guys that we recruit that if you come here, you're going to have to work extremely hard. I don't know if everybody does that. Right. Like I think there are some, programs where, everything you're recruiting the guy. So everything's about how much you love them
Right,
and how important he is to you, which we express that too.
right.
But if you don't understand that, like our workouts in the off season are 5:45, 4 days a week, right? Some of the time in season, we have to practice in the mornings. I don't love it in season for various reasons, but
Yeah,
because of our field situation, we have to.
yeah,
So we explain all of those things to try to limit how many guys come in thinking, college football is just like high school, because
right.
it's not. So recruit the right people. And then in terms of the culture, the culture that we believe in, that we've stressed from day one, is we define as the right way. And the right way on our terms is: one, live by the golden rule, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. In a word, I think it's about respect. To me, the game of football, athletics for sure, but the game of football, I think about more than any other, is a great connector of people in society today, because there aren't a lot of those,
Right.
right? When you're talking about bringing the people together from all these different backgrounds, and being required to go win games, on
Yeah,
Saturdays, you better have quality relationships.
right.
So,
They
golden
always,
rule.
they always say, I remember the statement, if the world was more like a football locker room, we'd have a lot less problems.
I 100% agree with that. It's funny. I was talking to one of our coaches this morning about that, about a couple different, political things going on in the world today. And I agree with that without a doubt. And then the second thing is another, you take from different people, it's Bill Belichick's do your job.
Yeah.
Right. So our two things are treat people with respect, live by the golden rule, and then do your job as well as you can do it. And so that's really what I believe it's about. That's how I believe we've been able to turn the corner, and we still have a long way to go. And it's only gonna get harder from here, being in this
Yeah.
conference. But get the right people and have some standards and expectations. And I think good things happen. And then to your point about North Central and Wheaton and how do you get guys to buy into that, what we sell is a different type of experience or opportunity. Right now they're certainly selling championships, as they should be, and
Right.
much respect to those programs and those coaches. What we're selling is an opportunity to make history and do
Yep.
things that have never been done in this program before, because
Yeah.
the history of this program is not very good.
Right.
Right? Most wins ever in a season are 7. So those are some of the things we're selling.
Yeah, you kind of have to go out there and look at guys that want to build something for themselves, because obviously a North Central can go out there and they're selling championships, and like you said, rightfully so, they should be. But then when you look at it as a recruit going to that program, those guys can't ever leave there and say they built North Central, because they're jumping on to a program that's already established. Whereas for you, you're looking to bring in guys that want to build something like that for themselves. So when they leave, they can come back and say, I was part of building North Park to the levels that it achieved. So I think that's a great way of attacking that recruiting process. When you're going up against some of those Goliaths, you have to find that different angle. That's a really good one. I want to come back to something you talked about with bringing in the right staff, because I know, I mean, the coaching world, I mean, it's a constant carousel. It doesn't matter what level you're at. There's always turnover and things like that. I feel like at the lower levels, it's even more so, because you don't get paid near, like, there's no glamorous salaries at the D3 level or anything like that. So for you, it's very important that you bring in the right guys, like you said, the guys that are going to fit your culture and your scheme. What are some things you do in the interview process to make sure that this guy is going to fit with the culture you've built there and going to gel with the philosophies that you have? What are some ways you go through that interview process to help narrow that down and find the guys that really fit what you're looking for?
Yeah, another really good question. I would say before we even get to the interview process, and this is common, obviously, in our profession, trying to first of all, if we have an opening on our staff and we have somebody I know that I think would be a good fit, starting there, starting with the people that that you have a background with, because you know more about them and their
Right.
character and who they are. And then, if you don't have, the perfect fit in your eyes for that position, then reaching out to your circle, right? So the coaches that I know that I, have great respect for, and we see it kind of the same, hey, who do you know? So that kind of helps narrow the scope a little bit. But then we will, we post every position as we have to, and we'll go through the process. And sometimes you'll find you'll come across some guys that are pretty attractive on paper. And so then when you go through the process, to me, I'm trying to get to know them. That first conversation isn't a whole lot about football, to be
Yeah.
honest, a little bit, but it's more about, who are you as a person, tell me about your family, sometimes you might have an idea based upon, older guy, younger guy, whatever, but you're married, you have kids, what's important to you, how do you spend your time when you're not, engrossed in football, to really, trying to get to know the individual, trying to get a gauge on, do I think they'll fit in with our culture of, treat people the right way, do your job at a high level. So I'm trying to kind of asking questions about organization and attention to detail and things of that nature before I even really get into X's and O's or recruiting. So getting to know the person first, I would
Yeah.
say, is the big thing.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So for you, obviously this is your first head job. You've had a chance though in your career. I believe you've been a coordinator on all three phases, correct? You've been special teams defensive coordinator and offensive coordinator. What do you feel looking back? Which phase would you say helped prepare you the most to be a head coach? Obviously, I don't know that there's anything that can truly prepare you to be that head coach and role, because of all the headaches that come along with it sometimes. But between those three positions, usually you're getting head coaches from one of those coordinator positions, which one would you say would be the best one to have experience with to help prepare you for that role that you're in now?
I've thought about this a little bit, and I'm going to go in a different direction to answer your question, but then I
Okay.
think they all had value. Coaching the offensive line.
Okay.
And I was a coordinator, as the offensive line coach, but not initially, right? So, but I think as an offensive line coach, I think I learned the most football coaching offensive line. And if you think about it, now you start talking about some nickel defense or dime defense situations, things like that. There might be 5 or 6 DBs out there, but it's the position where you have the most guys on the field all
Hmm.
the time. Outside of, like, now I coach quarterbacks and I love coach quarterbacks, right? And that's a whole different animal.
Yeah.
But when you have to get 5 guys on the same page, working together, connected, working in unison, I just feel like that was a great teacher to me in terms of what the overall culture for then an offense should be, and then from
Hmm.
there what a team should look like. Um, and also, I think maybe my experiences coaching offensive line tie a little bit into what I believe in terms of culture, because it's not let's just face it, it's not our receivers will get mad at me now, but it's not a prima donna position, right?
Yeah,
Like,
right.
O
It's a
line,
true it's a truly selfless position, which
it is.
ultimately that's the mentality you want for your team at the end of the day. So it definitely makes a lot of sense.
Yep. Now, I will say, I think having the experience on all 3 phases has aided me tremendously to become a head coach, right? Because even though, like, most of my experience, I played defense back in the day,
Hmm.
but I've coached defense, I guess 4 years in my career, a different, linebacker or defensive line. Most of my coaching career has been on the offensive side of the ball, but I think having that defensive background at times helps me from a play caller standpoint, right?
Right.
And like, everybody wants to, score the most points possible, and a lot of guys want to play as fast as possible, and we do some of that, and there's value in all of it. But there are times where, as an offensive coordinator and play caller, you can help your defense, right? And I think that defensive experience maybe plays into, helps me as an offensive, especially play caller some. And then special teams, you just get to touch every player, right? Every
Right. Right.
position group. That would probably still be my ideal scenario, kind of like Frank Beamer back in the day, just coaching special teams, just got
Yeah.
the right staff dynamic to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a little tougher at those lower levels when you don't have a full set of guys on both sides of the ball. Sometimes you have to coach as a head coach. You have to be involved with one side or the other. But I always felt that because I was the same way. I coordinated defense, offense, and special teams, and I always felt that that special teams coordinating aspect was definitely a unique one. And because, like you said, you're talking to the whole team. You're dealing with guys on offense and defense, and it to a certain extent nowadays, special teams is always kind of that forgotten phase of the game sometimes. And so you have to get guys in there. You have to create a selfless mentality because guys come in, they want to play offense or defense. They want to be a quarterback or receiver or DB, linebacker, or whatever. You don't get a lot of guys that are coming in saying, I want to be a guy that runs down on kickoff, right? Or I want to be the up back on kickoff return or something like that. So I think that definitely has a lot of carryover, but that's a very interesting aspect with the offensive line. It correlates a lot because of the mentality you want for your team. It's a
Mhm.
selfless team, and that's definitely the most selfless position on the football squad. So, um, what would you say? How would you say your styles changed from year one to now? What did you? How were you? Were you more hands-on year one, less hands-on? I mean, what are some things that you've developed as your time there in your 5 years as a head coach? How do you feel you've changed in terms of your coaching style over those 5 years?
Yeah. Depending on who you talk to, they might tell you some different things. But I would say there were 2 things that stand out. And one of it kind of ties back into the question you just asked. My vision of becoming a head coach was, I still, like, I love ball, so I want to coach a position, right, and be involved on either side, more so offense now. But my idea was kind of, probably coach tight ends, and coordinate the special teams, right? Because coaching
Right.
tight ends, you can be involved, you're intricately involved, run game, pass game, game plan, and all of that stuff. You can still be the play caller if need be, and then coach special teams. And then just because of some different scenarios with the staff, I felt like it was important for me to move to quarterbacks.
Hmm.
There came a point in time where I just felt like that was the right move for the program, and I think it was the right move for the program. Um, so I think I was going into it with, hey, like I'm going to hire these great coordinators, and we have really good coaches right now, right? And then they're going to do it, and I'm going to be okay with just like stepping back and not being as involved. And there are times I probably had to bite my tongue a little bit, and I think I did a decent job of that. But then the whole time, or not the whole time, but there are times I'm like we got to change some things, and I'm the head
Hmm.
coach, I got to change it, right? So I think I was a little bit more hands off early,
Okay.
and I'm not like, I don't think I'm a micromanager. Again, our coaches may say something different, but I am hands on more so now, especially with the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah. Would
And
you
then
say that that at first your main concern was trying to establish your culture so you weren't as focused on the X's and O's, so you were able to be a little bit more hands off?
that's a good way to explain it. um, I mean, I wish and maybe I did think about it on those terms, but it makes sense. And I think, definitely always thinking about the culture, always thinking about how do we build a better, closer team.
Hmm.
So yeah, that probably played into it some.
So what's something you wish you had known at the start? Now that you've been through it for 5 years, you've obviously gained some good experience. What is something you wish you had known at the start that maybe another head coach or a future head coach listening to this you would take with them? What is something that you wish you could go back and tell yourself, hey, do it this way, don't do it this way, etc.
The first thing is, don't take a head coaching job until post COVID, because I got the job and then COVID hit, and that was awful.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, literally every day was different, and you prepare a schedule, and I'm kind of OCD in terms of organization, and you get a schedule together and you had to change it. So that
Right.
was tough. I don't know. I mean, the biggest lesson I think I've learned, I don't know if this answers your question, but I've expressed this to our team many times, and I've also expressed it to recruits. We sell, going back to one of the things I talked about earlier, we sell Chicago, and we sell opportunity for internships and job placement. All those things are very true. And we have mandatory internships here with many of our majors, and you sell the CCIW and the competitiveness. But then, largely from a football standpoint, we're selling the opportunity to make history, right? To
Right.
to do these things that are different than anybody's ever done before. And I leaned on that a lot with our team early, right? And I don't really lean on it with our team anymore. And I've told our team that. I'm like, listen, and I think really between 2022 and 2023, like we were a much more competitive team in 2022, but still the record didn't reflect that.
Hmm.
Lost some games, and every coach feels this way, that you feel like you shouldn't have lost.
Right.
I think at times I put too much pressure on the guys, because I would still, in a lot of my messaging, it's about, hey, we have a chance to be special. We have a chance to be different. You have a chance to make history. And, I've always been a process guy, but that's not process based.
Right.
Right. And so my messaging wasn't what it should have been. And so I really
Hmm.
reflected on that a lot after the season. And so last year, our very first team meeting that we had in camp, I go through all our different things and the expectations and standards and culture and whatever. And then, one of the things I closed with was our schedule. All right, guys, here's a 2023 schedule. And the 2023 schedule, all it said was Manchester University, September 2nd, 6:00 p.m. And there was nothing else on it. Like the rest of the schedule for the whole year was blank. And
Hmm.
so the point I made was, we're going to apply that 1-0 mentality. And, we're going to go 1-0 to beat Manchester every day up until the time we play them. And we're not even going to talk about the next team until we win that game. Right.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. And we literally held to that the whole, people look ahead a little bit, but like I'm telling you, like the messaging was all 1-0, 1-0, 1-0, 1-0. To our players, 1-0, 1-0, 1-0.
Yeah.
To you got a big task when you're playing North Central or Wheaton, and North Central
Right.
still kicked our tail.
Yeah.
And Wheaton did as well, but we competed with Wheaton, and I
Yeah.
think in the past, we might have been, I don't know if we would have, but we just, hey, whatever happened, happened. It's 1-0. Let's go play the best we can play.
Right.
So that's the biggest lesson I've learned. Like, you got to focus on the now and focus on the process.
Right. Not just say want to know, but actually believe it and follow
Do
through
it.
with it.
Yeah.
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 Well, well, it obviously paid off for you this season, going 5-5, most wins since 1968 is what I read. So that's a hell of an accomplishment.
Thank you.
How do you carry the momentum of this past season into the off season? And you got to avoid that complacency, right? That's always the big fear. What are you doing? I'm sure it's something that you've thought about a lot. How do you carry that momentum? How do you keep building so that next season there isn't that fall off? There isn't that, oh, we made it type of mentality. We keep pushing forward. What are you doing with your guys?
Yeah, I think first off, it's just continuing to recruit, and
Yeah,
I do think and who knows this year with FAFSA, everything's delayed and we've got some commits, but I think Division III recruits, the commits right now are probably pretty soft across the country because the
right.
packages haven't been out. But recruit better players. We tell our guys all the time, the coach's job is to recruit players better than you. And I
Hmm.
tell them that, right? And it's your job to make sure that you keep your job
Right,
in terms of how you work. But then in terms of our messaging, I've made it very clear to our coaches first, and then our players, whatever the expectations and the standards were in terms of how we go about our business. And I think they're pretty high. I like to think that we need to take it up another level, right? Because I think in the past, there may have been maybe every team or most of the teams on our schedule that looked past North Park,
hmm,
right? Like that's an easy win. And I think maybe that played into our favor at times, frankly.
yeah,
I don't think anybody's going to look past us now.
right, right,
I don't think there's going to be, I think we're going to get everybody's, best shot, and everybody's going to prepare as well as they can, just like they're playing, the rest of the teams in the CCIW. So,
right.
that's been the big message. Like and again, want to know what we did last year. Hey, let's recognize that we had some success, but it's over with.
Right.
It's time to move forward.
Yeah. For sure. Did you end up losing a lot of guys? What's your retention in terms of guys coming back that had some, good experience and contributed to this past year's success? How many of those guys will be back next year?
The majority, like defensively, we've got 19 or 20 of our top 22 guys coming back. We had a couple, without diving into a whole nother portal, conversation could take all
Yeah.
day, but our underclassmen, and I told all of them this as well. Like, if you're an underclassman, if you go in the portal, you do not have an option to come back to North Park.
Okay.
And it goes back to our team and our culture and
Right.
family and all of that.
You either want to be here or you don't,
Okay.
and make that decision type of thing.
That's it. Now, with the fifth year guys who are going to be grad transfers, and again, I explained, like, everything we do, is transparent, and told every player on the team this. Okay, if you're an underclassman, you go in, come talk to me if you think that's in your best interest, and I'll give you some reasons why I don't think it is. But if you go in, then you can't come back here. If you're a fifth year guy, you're going to get your degree from North Park University. You've worked your tail off. You've done everything we've asked,
Right.
and we've got 4 guys, and I guess now down to 3 because one's coming back,
Okay.
that explored other options. One of them, one of our corners, Jason Atkinson, actually got an opportunity to go to Adams State at D2 in Colorado. They're going
Yeah.
to pay for his grad school next year. That's
Awesome.
awesome. Great for the
Yeah.
kid,
Right.
great for the
Absolutely.
family. We wished him well. One of our other guys is coming back, and then we got 2 still kind of waiting to see if they get something that makes sense.
Right.
And
Are they still currently working out with your guys and going through that stuff as they look, or are they separated from the program as they make that decision?
The guys that are in the portal are separated. They're still, like, they're not working out with the team,
Okay.
right? But they're still around and still involved to a degree, but they're not doing every workout with the team. And that's
Gotcha.
the only thing I don't love about it. But I just felt like these kids are all great kids. Again, they've done everything we've asked. I want to be fair to them. I'm also, trying to be, cognizant of our culture. And I think our players respect this group of 3 or 4 guys enough to where they understand kind of what the situation is.
Sure, sure. Awesome. Well, last question, obviously, forward progress. So we always like to talk about moving forward. What's it look like for you? What would you say over the next, 2 to 3 months, what's priority number one for you to make sure that you feel your program's moving in the right direction? Obviously, spring ball coming up, things like that. But what's your main focus? What's your main point of emphasis with your team, over the next 2 to 3 months until they get ready to leave for the summer?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we'll point directly to spring ball. We've got those couple weeks prior to, but what, really spring ball for us is about, and now as coaches, we're able to have more contact with our guys. So it's about really, hammering home again, the culture, the bonding, the family, atmosphere that we stress, and doing different activities to support that. And then getting better at football, through the meeting time that we have, learning the game. We have our, we'll have our installation meetings for practices. We also do what we call football school once a week, where it's not necessarily North Park offense, North Park defense. Like maybe we're watching some NFL film or some FBS
Hmm.
film, just talking different things. So, those are the
Just
two.
learning the game overall kind of deal.
Yeah. Because I mean, to be honest, like we have kids from, all different high school backgrounds, and some of them have been in programs where they kind of they get it, they understand it, they're pretty football savvy, and some of our other guys really haven't been coached all that much, right? So
Right.
it's amazing, even though they're talented athletes, that they don't understand the game very well.
Hmm.
So just working on culture would be 1A, and getting better at football 1B, so fundamentals, techniques. We're not going to go, deep into the playbook in the spring. It's really more about becoming a better football player.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, Coach, thanks again for coming on. I mean, I know you guys, it was a great season for you guys. And then obviously you were named D3football.com Region 5 Coach of the Year. So that's a hell of an honor. So congratulations on that. And
Thank you.
again, you've done a hell of a job there. And I can't wait to keep watching you guys as you progress and seeing what you guys are able to accomplish in the future. So thanks again, Kyle. Really appreciate you taking the time to jump on with me today.
You got to appreciate you, Nubis. Thank you very much.
All right. See you guys.